I would now like to kick off our next panel. I hear they've got a really good host, and invite speakers to join me on stage as we explore really innovative charging solutions for drivers without driveways, focusing on alternative solutions to public charging. Please join me on stage. And I'll get you to introduce yourselves to them. So, with emerging technologies and all these different policy frameworks that are designed to empower this 40% of EV drivers that don't have access to home charging, we've got on-street charging, we've got co-charging and fully funded solutions. So our panelists are going to share insights about all these different infrastructures and sort of the benefits for all the stakeholders involved. I would like to introduce our speakers very, very quickly, and then we've got a fantastic keynote as well. So we've got Nicolas here first, we've got Matthew in the middle, and Joel right at the end. I'll get them to introduce themselves, but first we have Nicolas to deliver our panel keynote. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, sure.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you all for joining us today. So I'm Nicolas Banchet. I'm co-founder of CHARGEGURU. And it's a real pleasure to be with you this morning, and a pleasure to see so many EV enthusiasts here. We will need all of this positive energy to move EV transition to the next step. So just to say a few words on CHARGEGURU. So we are Europe's EV charging expert. Basically, we install, we maintain, we operate EV chargers for individuals on the one side, but also for fleets. And we do it for single homes, single family homes, for apartment buildings, for office buildings, and for destinations. And to facilitate the transition to EVs, we even offer fully funded solutions when nobody wants to invest, to bear the investment in the infrastructure. And this is really relevant for apartment blocks. We will see that later on. And this is one of our differentiating factors. So we are very grateful to have partnered with the EV Summit this year at a critical time for the industry, which is facing major challenges: how to scale, how to accelerate EV transition, how to make the electric vehicle a solution for everyone. And that's exactly what our panel is all about: how to meet charging needs for the 40% of people without private driveways. So the transition to EVs may be at some point impeded by an over-reliance on public charging infrastructure, which would be bad news for the whole ecosystem. Home charging and workplace charging will be key for a massive EV adoption. If we want to project ourselves into the future, no need for a crystal ball. Just look at what's happening in the Nordic countries where EV penetration is much higher. They are facing this exact challenge and are pushing for more charging at home and charging at work. You may all be aware that if a driver has access to a private charger, then public charging only becomes relevant for long-distance drives. By enabling EVs to charge at home and at work, we grant access to more affordable rates for daily charging sessions, and we improve availability of public chargers for long-distance journeys, hence encouraging the transition to EV. However, charging at home is particularly challenging for people living in flats, which currently makes up close to 10 million people in the UK, and we're talking about over 50% of the European population, so it's a huge topic. And that's exactly the target of our fully funded offer. We recently conducted research among flat dwellers and property managers of apartment buildings across the UK. What we discovered is that over 70% of people, of flat dwellers, living in flats, are completely reliant, exclusively reliant on public charging, or would be if they had an EV. This study also showed that more than half of flat dwellers are hoping to switch to an EV in the next 5 years, and it's even 25% in the next 2 years. So the need is here, but the infrastructure is not ready yet to meet this demand. If accessibility to charging infrastructures, both public and private, at the same time, does not continue to develop sufficiently, the ability to trigger a massive shift to EVs will be compromised. So many EV drivers still believe that if they don't have any private driveway, their best option is public charging. Industry leaders, and you are the industry leaders, need to shift this narrative and highlight how home charging can be made accessible to everyone, regardless of their housing type. It's our duty to educate, to inform them about better cost-effective alternatives that empower drivers and promote energy democracy. By doing so, we will be able to accelerate the transition to a more sustainable and a more environmentally friendly mobility. So now it's my pleasure to sit alongside leaders in this space and to discuss solutions beyond public charging, which will drive this transition forward. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Nicolas. It was really, really insightful, and I'm looking forward to chatting through some of the nitty-gritty details with brutal honesty over the next 30 minutes. So before we start, could you each just share a little bit about yourselves, about your role? I know I did a brief introduction, but just so everyone in the audience knows who you are.
Yeah, so here again, co-founder of CHARGEGURU. We operate in 8 countries, including in the UK, and we deliver charging services for B2C and B2B customers.
Brilliant, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Matt Dale. I am head of transport consultancy for MITIE. I don't do FM, as everybody thinks we probably do, and I also don't do airport security, which is a real no-no for FM. We are helping clients understand how to transition to electric vehicles. The consultancy is around decarbonisation of transport. Over the last 2 years, we've worked with 20 clients to help them start their journey on EV transition, both in vehicle car fleet and operational fleets as well.
Good morning, I'm Teague. I'm the founder of CoCharger, which is the community charging app, one of the alternative base charging solutions out there. I'm also the chair of the alternative base charging group within Recharge UK, the REA, which is a group created to raise the profile of those solutions, those alternatives to home charging, which is the base charging most people use at the moment. So I'm kind of wearing both hats today.
Fantastic. So, Joel, I'll start with you then. So, in this industry, we hear a lot about the rhetoric, of public versus private charging. And in the media, I guess if you didn't drive an EV, what you'd be most concerned about is that there needs to be more public charging infrastructure. That's what we hear tirelessly. It's getting boring now, isn't it? But why do you think that is the case, that people are hammering on about this narrative of public charging?
Yeah, I think it's a few different things. I think there's a familiarity bias amongst the consumer. They want electron pumps, because that's what we're familiar with. I think that there is an oversimplification, not just in media, but I think within the industry, we've been guilty of oversimplifying and not splitting out, what is public charging? To me, a grid serve 350 kilowatt charge point has absolutely nothing in common, really, with a connected curb one. It's for different use cases. They may as well be a farmer and a greengrocer, two totally different things. So I think there's been that oversimplification. I think as an industry, we got going, as does any new industry, with big money. And that's what it's taken. And that's not surprising. But with big money comes that commercial drive to go where the money is. And the money is people who've got driveways. And I think we've run out of road on that, excuse the pun. We are picking up with CoCharger, especially my ABC hat on as well. I think the people without driveways, and it's not just the 40% without driveways, there's about another 10% who can't have a home charger for other reasons. So it's half of the people in Britain, roughly. And they're starting to get annoyed I think they're not feeling listened to. I think that what we need to recognise is nobody wants an EV without good public charging. And I think our public infrastructure is an emerging success story we can be proud of. But without a base charging option as well, no one's buying an EV. And it's this idea of the person that buys an EV on the basis of, oh, I'm going to use public charging, so far is kind of mythical. They're very, very rare. I think in the last 5 years, our public infrastructure has increased by about 75% a year average. It's huge, it's brilliant. The proportion of EVs going to homes without driveways has increased less than 1% a year. The correlation is almost zero. So it's time we just recognise that and gone, oh, okay, we need to do something new here. And stop, we need to move the narrative away from, oh, just use a public charger. It hasn't worked, it's not working, it won't work. And move it to, there's lots of ways of running an EV without home charging. Get the car. Then we can fight over who's got the best toys on how to run it. But that's the thing, is get to that. I think Chris Bateman-Jones this morning was saying it's about confidence. What you need before you get to the tech is the person to have the confidence to make the leap to the EV.
How do we inspire confidence then for drivers that are just sort of transitioning over to EV now and they're solely reliant on the public charging network? Within that, obviously, there's lots of different types of chargers, speeds of chargers. How do we say to somebody, you know, the public charging network's great, we've got loads of rapid chargers near you, and they're thinking, no, I want a 7 kilowatt charger so I can plug it in overnight. I don't want to be paying top tier prices when I know I don't need a rapid charge, I'm not on the go. How do we engineer solutions for that side of it?
Yeah, I think you don't start from there. That's a mistake we've been making. And to be honest, I think we ought to be a little ashamed of the fact that we haven't moved that needle and we're still not looking at the numbers. It's very clear that doesn't work. We've all met Joe Public, right? Down the pub. They are misinformed, very professionally misinformed. They're change resistant, they're nervous. Do we really think they're going to go and make a big leap to a new type of transport on the basis that once a week they've got to go and use this network that they've incorrectly been told is unreliable and sit with the car for 2 hours or behind an Uber and a DPD van and pay almost as much as petrol to run it? No, you don't start with that. You start with, there's lots of ways of doing this, including public charge points. And then there's another, later on in that transition process when they get the car, then they can look at what's the best one for them, which might be a super rapid round the corner, it might be a curbside, it might be community charging, it might be a cross-pavement device. We need to stop saying, oh, just use public charging. They ain't buying it. And we need to go, actually, there's a lot more. And I think we recognise it's a two-step process. The first one is about reassurance and confidence. We start with that.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Nicolas, I'll come over to you now. So at ChargeGuru, you're sort of talking about zero charge time when you're charging either at work or at home. You know, you're not there solely to charge. How can we make the most of low-power charge stations, and how can we provide a really seamless, exciting charging experience to those users who are looking to branch out to different types of charging?
Yeah, home charging is really convenient on a daily basis. I mean, for daily charges, it's at home, so it's your own charging station. You don't care about availability. It's your home charger. It's always there. It's overnight charging, so you plug it when you're back home. And then it's fully charged. I mean, the car is fully charged in the morning, so it's like your smartphone. You don't wait until it's fully charged. It's charged in the morning when you leave your house. It's plug and charge. You don't care about authentication or payment. So there's no, in terms of experience, it's very easy. And of course, it's very cheap because you benefit from, you can switch to off-peak tariffs, and then it's 4 times cheaper than public charging.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting the fact that you say that. I mean, I talked to some of my friends about driving EV, and most of them have never touched, seen, been driven in an EV, and they can't get their heads around the concept of just plugging it in whenever you're at home. And they're like, yeah, but how do you know when you'll need it? No, but that's why I've plugged it in, so that if I did need to go somewhere, it's ready. It's a lifestyle change, isn't it? And it's, like you said, that confidence, that education piece. Matt, I want to hear from you next. So, we've spoken about 40% don't have home charging. This percentage is even higher when we're talking about vans, when we're talking about operational fleets. How do we then address that gap? Because that's a completely different audience. And I guess you've got to tailor your message for each group of people or drivers that you're talking to. That's really, really tricky. How do we do it?
Yeah, I think you make a really good point there. It is a case of one size doesn't fit all anymore. We don't all go to a fuel station, put a nozzle in the car, and that solves it for everybody. So this 40%, which, as you rightly say, operationally speaking, how many vans do you actually see parked on the road versus parked on the drive? How many people are allowed to park them there? As we transition operational fleet and people who haven't got off-street parking, it becomes extremely complex, and there isn't a single answer for it. There are lots of people who are doing different things, and I think this is what people have to accept when they're transitioning to electric, is there are different needs for different fleets and different people within those fleets. You can no longer cubbyhole all of your drivers into one space. And this is one of the key things that fleet managers are having to learn as they take their employees through these journeys is, actually, I've now got to be even more diverse than I was before, because it's no longer a case of a BMW or a Mercedes. It's now a case of the type of vehicle, how far it will go, how are you going to charge it, what are you going to do for those people that can't park on their drive at home, and also what are you going to do for those employees who are operationally in their vehicles during the day and need time to charge them during the working day. Yeah. There's a lot of things to consider in there, and there is no single answer. That's the short answer to it.
Absolutely, and I think sometimes that's what we need to hear. There is no one single answer. There is no one hard and fast rule of it must be this and it must go like this. It's just not like that, and I guess we're also figuring out those challenges as we approach them, which is probably quite daunting to the general public. But we're all, pioneers in our own way, trying to navigate these different challenges. Joel, I want to talk to you then. I've got this really, really interesting fact that you made me aware of. So 1 million private chargers across the UK remain unused for over 20 hours per day. It's absolutely crazy. What can we do then to increase the utilisation of those chargers that exist, that work, that are easy to get to, but they're just sat there not being used? It feels like such a waste.
Yeah, you share them. It's very, very simple.
That's it, panel over.
I think the point is, it might be 800,000, who cares? It's a lot. And when you think about it, an average car, average efficiency, average miles, you're looking at 96% dormant. If that was shared between 6 neighbours, it goes up to perhaps 25% of utilisation from 4. You're still nowhere near full, but what you've done is you've enabled 5, 6 neighbours to make that leap to an EV instead of buying another petrol car. And if that's what we're aiming to do, is prevent people buying more fuel cars, that's got to be the mantra, then that's what it's about. And I think the other important thing is you don't need to share many of them. An analytic, I think it's the Daveena Analytics, did a model a couple of years ago now that showed if you can just do 1 in 25, then that will massively address the imbalance. And that's what we're seeing. With Co-Charger, we work with fleets a lot. And it's sometimes you get a host who's got 3 neighbours, and they generally take 1 night each, because it works very easy. But with fleets, it's the other way around. We do a lot of work with Uber, and we have hosts who've got 1 Uber driver charging 6 times a week. Those guys work hard. And it's still only hitting sort of 80% utilisation. And it works well for everybody. It's a matter of, that's the domestic model, but I think there's some really good projects going on to share depot chargers. Some of the bus companies, I think there's some really good projects going on. So I think that while we've got to carry on pushing to get more infrastructure out there, it is a bit of a silly misalignment that we don't up the utilisation of the infrastructure we've got, especially as it helps balance the grid. It's very helpful if 5 households share 1 charger instead of all plugging in on the same day. So just share it. It's not that hard. We've done all the hard work. 5 years ago, we didn't know how well it would work. We've done it. Thousands of sessions happen now. It works really well.
Absolutely. Nicola, let's talk about some of the work that ChargeGuru do. So you offer fully financed solutions, particularly for apartment blocks, apartment living. How does that model actually work? What are the practicalities of that? And what are, I guess, a lot of people when they're dipping their toe into the EV pond, they want to know the benefits. What are the benefits to me? What are the costs to me? How does that work when you're trying to balance the wants and needs of landlords and of residents at the same time?
Yeah, we're typically in a context where nobody wants to invest, at least today. So landlords, they don't want to pay for the infrastructure, and they don't want to have to maintain it, to upgrade it, to talk to people willing to charge, and maybe it does not work, so they will have questions. They don't want to take care of that. And at the same time, when we have co-owners, which is the case outside of the UK, this is the model, people do not want to pay for the neighbor. So if they don't have an EV, why should they pay for an infrastructure in the building? So we come with a solution, which is indeed fully funded. So it's all about implementing a new independent electrical network in the building that is dedicated to EV charging. And then we install private charging station on private parking spots. So it's your charging station. You have it whenever you want, and you can charge during the day, during the night. So it's very convenient for people living in the building with all the reasons I mentioned earlier. It's private charging. It's very convenient as well, or very interesting for the landlords because it brings value to the building. It's future-proof. There is a solution, and there's someone, CHARGEGURU, taking care of implementing the charging station, the network, and the charging station, upgrading it, insuring it, maintaining it, so it's costless for them.
Well, that's the key bit, isn't it? Everyone cares about the bottom line, understandably. And I think if you can show that you can be sustainable and maintain a profit, if not make more profit, it's absolutely a valid investment and, you know, a direction that a lot of property investors and landlords should be heading in. So, Matt, let's talk a little bit then about the role of housing associations. I can see you smiling already. This is going to be interesting. So, yeah, that's another panel. How key is it then that these housing developments really get involved with the infrastructure that we're putting in, get to understand it, get to know how it works, so that they can be advocates for it? I guess you can't advocate for something you don't like and you don't know. And how can you make the most of these fully funded solutions? Because I guess, you know, it's great if CHARGEGURU come in and they've got 6 chargers for an apartment block, but how can you actually encourage people to use it in the right way, to work with their housing association?
It's a really complicated area. We've worked with police forces, ambulance, public and private sector. Housing associations are the most complicated because they have their own operational fleet, they have tenanted properties, they are governed by legislation that they can't control what infrastructure goes into a new build. They have legacy infrastructure, which tends to be dumb, as we've seen in various places, and they don't like to spend money or they don't have the money to invest. So with a solution the likes of CHARGEGURU bring into the market, it's a really interesting concept for the housing associations to get hold of, because they've got this problem. So if a new build goes up, a new apartment block goes up, by rule under Part S of the planning regulations, they have to put a certain amount of infrastructure in. They have no control over what that infrastructure goes in, especially if it's classed as a Section 106. It's put in by the contractor who builds the property. It's normally got no back office on it, and it's normally the cheapest infrastructure they can buy. Nobody can access it, and they can't use it unless it's for free. Nightmare. So it needs a lot of work to pull it together to go, actually, you collaborate. You allow anybody in that apartment or block of flats to use that infrastructure. You allow the people who are coming on site to maintain those buildings to use that infrastructure. When it's not used at certain times, you open it up to other people. It's a great opportunity to collaborate, but the problem that it goes all the way back to is who's supplying the power. It could be the landlord, it could be a management company, it could be the housing association, or it could even be coming from the property itself. So it's a really complex area. It's really great to be working in it and helping people solve the issues. It is a here and now, and it is something that is going to have a big impact on EV uptake because of the amount of people that live in this type of accommodation. So,
it's a really complex
it is really complex,
isn't it?
But it's a big opportunity.
And we need to make the most of it, because actually the majority of our populations live in urban areas. So if we can't do charging in urban areas, we're really not going to be, you know, hitting the goals that we've set for ourselves within the industry, but also nationally.
Absolutely.
Where do you think the educational piece then, and this is a question to all of you in your various roles, where do you think the education piece fits into this? Because we've spoken about sharing, about sort of getting to grips with compliance and the rules and regulations. How do we get that out to everybody else? We've spoken about it in this room. Now what?
I was talking to somebody earlier about this, Dave Watts, he's in here somewhere, and we were chatting about it earlier. And everybody in this room probably knows 100% about EV. Everybody that's not got an EV yet probably knows about 10%. There is a massive gap that we've got to close, and that's with vehicle manufacturers, that's with dealers selling them, that's with people who are buying them, that's with the media that write about them. We've all got to kind of take a step back and understand that whilst we understand a lot about EV, other people don't. So the education is absolutely across the board, and it needs to be fairly consistent as well. We've got to move away, in my view, from we can solve everybody's problems. We can't. We can together, but I can't solve them all, and we have to collaborate better. So we've got to just work together and educate people.
That's a really fantastic answer, and something I'm so passionate about. The EV Summit is just all about collaboration, all about making those connections and seeing how we can drive forward our business and our passions collectively. We've only got a few minutes left. It's been a total hoot, and it's just gone so quickly. Why are you all laughing? We have 4 minutes and 10 seconds for questions. So, oh my gosh, guys. So Elliot is going to run around with a mic now. We've got somebody in a red T-shirt in the middle. Let's be super quick with questions, guys, like really brief.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great, yeah. It's Mike Goulden from Turbocharge. It was good to hear about ChargeGuru's product for blocks of flats, but we didn't hear much about cross-pavement charging products, which are entering the mainstream. We are live or have confirmed trials for 23 councils now. And we're in Oxfordshire, the home of Gully, which has a number of trials as well. So I'm interested to hear the panel's views on those for meeting that 40%.
Yeah. To me, it's a vital part of the ABC thing, the alternative-based charging. It's about awareness. It's why we've... I think, to answer your previous question, combining with that, is we've got to stop being evangelists, if you like, and get out of our bubble and start being sympathisers with where we're in now, early mainstream, and give them confidence by saying, look, you can have a gully, you have a gantry, you can share a neighbour's charger, you can use a public charger, it's got to be that reassurance instead of, woo, isn't it great, everybody do it. And I think the gully thing is a really good example of that, of getting that through as a grant to do it. You know, it's so important, it could help millions of people not to buy a petrol car. So yeah, it's one of the things we should be shouting about.
It's part of the solution. Plain and simple. It's part of the wider solution.
Right, 2 minutes 39. Next question, let's go. It's like a race, I love it.
Half the time is actually getting the mic. Yeah, quick question. So ChargeGuru, I think you're active in 8 countries. I'd be really interested to know which country actually has the best uptake and sort of regulatory environment for blocks of flats. And what is the secret to making it easy?
That's a good question.
It's a complex one. Each country is very different. Different regulations also in terms, for electrical infrastructures, different support from governments. In France, it's true that there are subsidies on cars as well as on charging infrastructures, notably for apartment blocks. So it's really led to massive takeoff. I did not mention that, but our solution has been adopted in 20,000 buildings in France. So it represents more than 1 million parking spots that are eligible to our solution. The government, the situation is also quite positive in the UK. It used to be positive in Germany, but they stopped the subsidies on EVs recently, and it had a massive impact on sales. And the situation is a bit more chaotic in Spain and Italy, for instance. So we see a deep correlation between the subsidies and the support from the government and the adoption of EVs. So very different situation, but we are here to adapt and provide the right solution.
58 seconds. I think we've got time for another one. I think if you just throw the mic and just hope it lands, we've got to do what we've got to do.
She's waving hard.
Run, Elliot, run.
I just thought, I'm glad I didn't wear jeans today.
I know.
We're a shining example
Was
of
there a
homogeneity
memo I
in
didn't
the
get the hint
industry.
on? Blazers and jeans. Guys, I thought we were friends.
Sorry, next time I'll wear a onesie.
Please don't.
Sorry, thank
Oh,
you
don't
so
hold me
much.
to that.
Sarah MacArthur, Arval UK formerly. Charge point chat. It was something I was very keen to land, but don't you think that communications, online or off, is key to unlocking the availability of charge points across the country? So, for example, be that workplace or at home, that, you know, by communicating with each other, we can understand availability. And then finally, I suppose in terms of the likes of a partner like Just Park, I've got an EV, I'm parked on a driveway, I'm not currently charging when I'm stopped for longest. How do you think we unlock those kind of partnerships so that the right people are able to charge on driveways across the country when they're stopped for longest? And apologies, that was a longer question. 2 parts.
The monitor is flashing, so let's keep it brief.
Okay, my short answer to the last bit is we already have. Actually, the second biggest network in the country is CoCharger. Yeah, is the guy from Shell in here? We're coming for you. Yeah, that's the answer. It is unlocked. There are ways of doing it.
Thank you so much. If you do have additional questions for our panelists, they will most definitely be at the next networking session, so feel free to pin them in a corner until they answer you. Thank you, everybody on the panel, for such a great discussion. It's been really fun. We should definitely do this again. Same time next year. And I would like to invite you to all give a round of applause to our lovely panel. Thank you so much.